So yeah, I'm Brett McRae, I guess owner of McRae Land and Livestock. My wife Chantel is going to be joining us here later. She's coming for lunch. You guys have met Tiana, our livestock production technician. She's the one that's done most of the work on this field. I'll give her the credit this year. Yeah, Michael calls me an expert. I'm an expert only because I've made more mistakes than most people probably. So this is just going to showcase kind of what we do on our farm, what we've learned over the years of corn grazing. We've done this. We've actually learned from Wayne Heinrichs. Brett, his son Brett's here as well. That's another great resource. That's where we kind of picked this up from, and then we've just kind of honed it over time to fit our operation. On our farm, we've corn grazed and custom corn grazed for probably 5-6 years, and then when we ran our cows with dads, probably another 5 or 6 years before that. So we've just kind of had some time on the water to learn it. This photo here was 2 years ago. At one point we had 510 head in the one field on 136 acres for the winter. So that was a big field, but it was a lot of fun. So I'm going to walk through kind of start to finish. Like right now, if you were planning on corn grazing for 2024, where do we start? What do you start thinking about? How do we plan out the field? How do we set it up? And then what do we do come fall time? So when it comes to field rotation, when I'm selecting a field, crop rotation is the first thing I'm looking at. Does this fit into our crop rotation? Next thing is shelter. The field that we're going to go to, there's a little bit of shelter, but not really. It's not the ideal field in a perfect world, but it's kind of the one that fit into our rotation and was the best setup for shelter and water. In the crop, we want to try and work ideally from the south end of the field to the north side of the field, or from the east side of the field to the west side of the field. So you're kind of going into the wind. As I was reviewing this presentation last night, I was like, I'm breaking all the rules I'm about to put in here, but it is what it is. It's good to plan for storm days. It's really crucial to plan for storm days. In some of the fields we can be caught with our pants down a little bit sometimes because we're in pretty open country. There's not a lot of shelter. We do try to plan for storm days the best we can. The nice thing with corn, and probably the biggest reason we use it, is because it provides its own shelter a lot of times. We're going to talk a little bit about fencing and cross fencing and how to set that up, and we'll see a lot of that in the field. And then having water available is a real key to make this work. And the big thing is always make it easy to get back to water. I've definitely made that mistake before where cows got to go around corners or get stuck, go in the wrong direction and get kind of into a pocket and they can't get back to water, and it really makes for a problem. We have grazed snow and used snow as a water source. Usually at some points in the winter, we'll have calves on the cow. If cows are lactating, we for sure want to have them water. If I have custom cattle in, which I don't right now, but when I do have custom grazing cattle, I try to always have water for them. And this year, because we're trying to gain weight on these cattle, we have water for them pretty much the whole time. So we're also going to see the old Windwagon 6000. This is, I think, made some people in the community lose some bets, I think, for how long it stood up. The first year it did good. It has flipped over at least once, but we've modified it a few times. That's when it was brand new. So we have some portable windbreak. And then the other thing about field selection, this is, as I was planning out the one field, we did some trial strips here. So what we did in this field from the green strip to the white strip or whatever, like that was 330 feet. The strips that we have this year is 660 feet wide. We try to set it up so in this field the water was down here. We try to set it up so they can come in and graze this strip and then move over and graze this strip and then always be able to get back to water easily. This field as well, the shelter and the corrals were down kind of in this area. So try to make it easy for them to flow out of the cornfield again. If you'd have to take them to corrals, if they have to go to water, shelter, etc. So for crop rotation, we're no-till producers, so we try to minimize tillage as much as we can, going back to that minimizing disturbance as they talked about before. Ideally, we try to plant corn following a legume. The dark straw of a legume like peas or soybeans tends to warm the soil a bit and give you, like a lot of guys up here will say corn has to go into black dirt. With the dark straw, the legume, that will definitely help. It's also a good use of residual nitrogen. And we've found that corn on corn does work, especially like using grazing corn or silage corn. Corn on corn does work. It works well for us. If you're following cereals, tillage is probably required. This field that we're going to go to was following barley, but it was barley that was combined and all the straw was baled, so it had very little residue sitting there. We also, with our hoe drill, when we went in to seed the corn, the beans and the vetch after the corn, we blackened it up enough that we kind of got away without a tillage pass there. Yeah, so if you were going into heavy residue with cereals, tillage is probably required. Or if you're going into an uneven seed bed, where our corn is going to go next year, I'm already planning we're going to be going into a tilled field because we have to have a nice seed bed to plant that corn into. And no-tilling into grazing corn residue absolutely can work. Ask Jim. Jim seeds our corn for us. His planter is set up that we can do it, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. So our rotation right now, this is kind of subject to change, but we're generally doing corn followed by canola into a spring cereal, winter cereal, and then a legume, then back into corn. As we expand, we're probably going to drop this down so that this would go back, so it would be corn, canola, and then come back to spring cereal, winter cereal as well. Having a third corn in the rotation is a lot of corn. As we expand, we're not going to be able to have that much corn in our rotation. It just logistically turns into a problem. Probably one of the biggest problems with grazing corn is you can have too much feed, and then you have to find a market for it.
When you do corn on corn, those are both grazing years, or is it combine?
So this is the first year we ever combine corn. So we will see how that fits into our rotation. What we've done so far has been grazing corn, like corn on corn into grazing corn. We haven't, on our farm, haven't silaged anything. Dad does. I don't think he's ever done corn on his. He's done it with grazing corn, but not with silage corn. With corn on corn with grain corn, I'm not sure how it's going to work. We're going to find out this year. There is a lot more residue sitting there.
Do you let your animals graze it? Residue?
We did. We had to pull them off because it was so wet this fall. I was hoping to get a lot more grazing out of that field than we did, but because it was wet and they're starting to punch it out, we decided to pull them off before they pugged up the field too much. When it comes to variety selection, this is one of the biggest things that I'm a proponent of. Minimum 2 varieties, at least 2. We go with 2 with the planter that we use. It's a central commodity planter, so we can only use 2 varieties without mixing them. And what I recommend is a standard silage variety, whatever your agronomist would recommend as a silage variety, and then a super long season variety. The one that your agronomist or the guy selling you corn seed looks at you and goes like, you want what? That's the one you want. So for us, like North Star 913S, 75-day corn, it's 2150 corn heat unit corn. That's most of the guys that are planting silage corn. That's probably, Kyle, would that be what you would recommend?
No, I would actually go with 932.
932, even for silage?
For silage, we're seeing better cobs, longer maturity. So you're actually getting probably a ton to 2 tons more per acre off 932 than we are to 913 or 928.
Yeah. So, and here, like even, like I can maybe even push this farther yet.
Yeah, we would push you probably to 99, I'd take you 92 days.
Okay.
Right? Even though North Star has a variety that's even longer, that I would not be scared to try it for a grazing corn.
Yeah. So the big thing that we're trying to do here is put a little bit of insurance into this. With the 913 or with the shorter season corn, kind of your typical silage corn, we're getting something that we know is going to get to maturity. Even if we have an early frost, we're going to have corn that's mature or mature enough to provide the energy that we need. With the 932 or with the longer season corn, we're trying to have stuff that's not fully mature. If you have a really long year, it's not as mature. Like your 75-day corn, you know, a year like this, it's probably darn near black layer. Like it's a really getting to be really high energy and a higher acidosis risk. With the longer maturity corn, you have a little bit less acidosis. You're trying to get a little bit less energy in part of the field and a little more fiber. So you're kind of balancing that energy and to acidosis risk with that. The North Star corn has been really good because it's a just through the plant breeding, it's bred a little bit more for grazing. You can, like any corn will work for this. Typically you want a silage specific variety. That's kind of, that breeding is what you would want. If you had straight grain corn, it would work. It's just going to be a little bit more mature, harder kernels, can be harder for them to kind of break them open and digest. Like I said, when in doubt, go with more corn heat units. Like I know, like you had just said, there's probably a lot of guys, even on silage, are stretching that corn heat units a little farther. I know when I started doing this, I can't remember who it was that I bought seed from, and they're like, "You seriously? You're that long?" And now, like you say, even guys silaging are going to that longer heat unit corn.
And you want a floury kernel instead of a hard kernel.
Yes, so this is, and we'll see that out in the field. We have some of the North Star corn. We also have some stuff from Proven Seed, which is not a floury kernel, and we'll be able to see the difference out in the field. So field prep for corn, this is standard corn agronomy. There's nothing really earth-shattering here. Keep it clean. Corn has to be into a clean field. If in doubt, spray it out. Like you have to have a nice seed bed, a clean field to start with. Corn does not like competition until it's about this high. And then you can kind of get away with a lot. Uniform seed bed is a must. Like I said, the field we're going to next year, because it was breaking like last year, we're going, because I know there's some lumps and sod clods there, we're gonna have to till it because I need that uniform seed bed. We want every corn seed to be, you know, the same depth, come up at the same time. No-till corn is possible, but you must have a planter that's set up correctly. So Jim Ritchie plants our corn for us. He has a planter that is set up very, very well. It can do a lot of things that probably many other planters can't, fair to say. Yep. It's got sharp discs. There's hydraulic downforce on there. It comes with seed firmers and in-row fertility, which is maybe not a must-have, but it's definitely a nice-to-have. And it has closing wheels and a closing system that can, in no-till, can close that seed V. If you're interested in no-tilling corn, looking up Exacta Solutions or Paul Yassa is a extension specialist from University of Nebraska. Those are kind of where I've learned on what I know on no-tilling. I've learned from those sources, among a few others. You don't have to no-till. Like obviously conventional tillage corn is proven to work here. This is just something that we choose to do, and it does work. So this is Jim's planter. This is going into, I believe this is annual ryegrass stubble. This I think was either barley or wheat stubble, and then this is corn on corn. So this is grazing corn. This is going right into the corn residue. So yeah, it's hard to see in some of these pictures. On this planter, we've got 2800, so our nitrogen's getting side banded 2 inches away from the seed row. We also have a starter blend dribbling down the Keaton seed firmer right onto the seed. This planter does some pretty cool things. This is now following our grazing corn. This is using a John Deere 1890 zero-till drill, planting canola. And it's a little bit tricky on a drill with that, like going from a 30-inch row down to a 7.5-inch row. You're going to be riding over some clumps and clods a bit. I did wonder about rolling this field first just to level everything off for a more even seed bed for canola. But with individual rows, like individual depth adjustment on each row, we did grow a good canola crop on this field. So when it comes to planting, my agronomist has given me the recommendation 8 degrees Celsius for at least 3+ mornings. You want to have a warm seed bed. We held off the 1 year and pushed our seeding date back, and we were very happy that we did. That's the year that we had the 500 some head on 136 acres. That was some of the best corn that we grew. And we planted it a lot later than we were originally thinking. 2 inches deep or deeper. Jim and I often have this. This is usually where we have contention. I keep saying deeper. Yeah. Jim likes to stay to 2. I keep, come on, deeper, we can go. We put fertility down with the planter is ideal. It's not a must-have, but it's really, really nice. To be able to have that nitrogen side banded in the starter on the seed, I really like that because all the nutrients are right where the corn's going to use them. It's not feeding the weeds, we're now feeding the corn. If you have like a conventional planter or whatever, or don't have that capability, because that comes with a cost, I understand. It's going to be fine. This is the ideal thing. It works with conventional tillage, broadcasting fertilizer, with incorporation. All that stuff's been proven to work. This is just kind of my preferred method. If you're using an intercrop, north-south is preferred. Again, this is something that we're breaking the rules this year. East-west is probably better if you're just using a straight corn crop. With intercropping, we've been recommended to try and plant the intercrop, like planting your corn later, so after May long weekend, and lowering our population. So on the field that we took for grain corn this year, it was 30,000 population, and originally we were planning to graze it, but then we opted to harvest it for grain instead. So it was 30,000 population, and it was planted. It was actually planted after, but we could have planted it sooner if the soil was ready for it. With intercropping, the soybeans and vetch, we've been, Covers & Co. has recommended try to stay after May long weekend and lower your population to 24,000 to let more light into the canopy so that cover crop can get some light. And we'll see that when we get to the field a bit. Now, there's a lot of people with a lot of interest about interseeding. This is another one of our creations, was the interseeder. It's an old row crop cultivator that we've added some, they're actually fertilizer coulters off an old corn planter for discs. And then we mounted a Valmar to it to seed between the rows of corn. So we've tried this for probably 4 years or so with limited success. We have been able to get diversity. We've been able to get a very nice cover crop in between the corn that looks really good in July, but come August, it's pretty much shaded out and is there, but barely surviving. And then come winter time, I got some slides coming up. It doesn't provide enough forage value. The diversity value here for feeding the microorganisms and stuff in the soil, absolutely. This, I think, really works well. As far as economic value of being able to supplement that ration and the cows get some forage from it, we haven't had success with that. And we've also, this here is doing it on 60-inch rows. So we've blocked off every other row of the planter and done 60-inch corn with the cover crops. We've done it on 30s. It's risky. It's extremely time sensitive. Like when it's time to go interseeding, you have to be out there. And the big thing is it needs specialized equipment. In order to do this, we had to move the wheels on our tractor in and out like to 6. So these are at 60-inch centers and 120-inch centers. And moving the wheels on your tractor, moving your axle spacing back and forth, the crew got pretty sick of doing that. So we stopped doing that. With polycropping, so this is what we're doing in the field that we're going to see this year. We have foraged soybeans that we got from Covers & Co. We seeded them at about 20 pounds an acre. We also have approximately 5 pounds an acre of hairy vetch out there. With this, you're committed to straight glyphosate. The foraged soybeans are a soybean from like North Carolina or somewhere way in the south. You won't see a single pod on them, but they were green going into fall. They're super long season, but they're glyphosate tolerant, so no issues there. The vetch, glyphosate will stunt it. Won't really kill it, but it will stunt it. I'm not sold on it, so we opted to do the half a rel, so 0.33 liters of 540 twice. So that would be half rate of what you would normally spray corn with. And we sprayed it twice. The one strip, we left one 10-acre strip where we didn't spray the second time. I'm not really convinced it's giving us the performance we want. I would like to have another glyphosate tolerant thing that we could put in here for more diversity yet. I haven't found it yet. But this has been proven to work. The beans were huge. We're still like, even right now, you'll be able to see even after some snow, there's some beans and some leaves that they can grab. This is an interseeded crop. So this is kind of some of the best case scenario. It's nice because you can add a lot of diversity here. Like there's ryegrass and clover and vetch, and there was probably 8-10 different species in here. So we could add a lot of diversity. We just didn't get as much grazing value out of it. Like here's in the fall, as soon as the first snow hits it, everything that was standing up here just falls down flat and freezes to the ground, and the cows really can't utilize it the way I'd like. So now that we've grown the corn crop and we have our intercrop or whatever into it, now come fall time, it's time to start estimating, okay, what do we have? We're getting ready to harvest. How do we estimate our yield? I guess before we get into this, any questions on growing the corn so far?
Once again, the poly cropping that was seeded with the corn, you didn't make an extra pass for poly?
It was an extra pass. So the field we did this year, initially we were going to seed the soybeans and vetch and on a 5-degree angle, and then plant the corn. Just the way logistically it worked out this year, we actually planted the corn first, and then the next day went out there with the beans and vetch and planted on the 5-degree angle. But the corn's 2.5 inches deep, the beans and vetch were 1. So we got away with it. I don't know. This year I'm not sure if we'll go before or after. It'll probably just kind of come down to when things happen in springtime. As you know, it gets busy. If you needed to put on fertilizer, that would, like if your corn planter didn't have fertilizer capabilities, that'd be a great time to do it. Like if you could put fertilizer down with your drill and not the planter, I would absolutely do that. It gives you some options. Any other questions before we get into yield?
Are you putting all your fertilizer down with the planter or top?
Yeah. So right now we're putting down 90 pounds of N with the planter, and then an Alpine liquid starter blend for phos and micros and all the other. And I haven't got too scientific on that. Just Daryl Carlisle sells it. He grows a lot of corn. I said, whatever you use, let's use that. And that's what we've started with. We may tweak in the future. But yeah, we haven't top dressed any corn yet. For grain corn, we probably will start. For grazing corn, no, probably not. We've seemed to have enough yield without another pass, so. Good. So for estimating yield, if you look on Google, just look up for corn yield estimator, like Pioneer Seeds, Pioneer Hybrids will have that. If you take 17 feet 5 inches, that's 1/1000th of an acre on a 30-inch row spacing, which most corn planters around here are. You take usually 3 or 4 cobs out of that. You try and take the average cobs out of that space, and it'll get you to count in that 17 feet 5 inches how many cobs are there, and then you take 3 or 4 of them and average out how long are they and how far around, and it'll walk you through exactly how to do that. That will give you a rough estimate on yield. You put the numbers into the calculator and it'll tell you if it's a good crop, you'll be, here 150 bushels. If it's a moderate crop, it'll be 140, and if it's a poor crop, it'll be 120. And they'll give you, you kind of got to use your eye a bit and guess a little bit, but it'll get you in the ballpark. My formula that I use for estimating yield is you take what your grain yield's estimated to be, or if you were combining this corn, you'd be even, like if you were set up for combining corn, you took a swipe through this to get kind of an idea of your yield. Take your grain yield times 54 pounds a bushel in corn, and then my number is I just multiply that by 2. From what I've heard and this has gotten me close enough. Half of the weight of the corn is in the cob, the other half is in the rest stalk, stover, etc. And then I use 90% as my utilization, because I'm assuming we're not going to eat every single bite that's out there. So if I had 125 bushel corn times 54 pounds times 2 times 90%, gets me 1,250 pounds of grazable forage per acre. Then you have to figure out what your demand is going to be. So take your cow, whatever your average cow weight is, times 3%, 3% of their body weight is times the number of cows is how much your forage demand is. So if you have 1,350 pounds times 3%, it's 40.5 pounds of forage per cow per day. So if you have 12,150 pounds of forage out there, and you need 40 pounds or 40.5 pounds of per cow per day, that's 300 cow days an acre for the corn, which is very achievable. Our budget has been we started at 250. Right now I budget for about 300 cow days an acre, and we've been there. That's been probably close to our average. Another way to look at it, if you had an 80-acre field and 300 cow days an acre, you can feed 250 cows for 96 days. If you have 80 acres of corn at 300 cow days an acre, if you want to feed them for 200 days, you got enough feed for 200 cows. So using this math, you can look at it in October and say, okay, you know, if I've got 250 cows to feed, okay, I've got enough feed for 96 days. If I want to feed them for 120 days, I've either got to supplement or I've got to plan to buy some hay. You can also stretch this up and down a little bit with supplementation. Using straw, using protein as a supplement, you can really stretch a cornfield. Some of the stuff, like we have been as low as probably 120, 160 cow days an acre, and our highest, we've had 2 25-acre strips that have been over 400 cow days an acre. That's with a lot of straw and some protein supplement, but that's a lot of cow feed per acre. So when we're setting up the field, what I use, because most of our fields are set up kind of to implement grazing fairly easily, we try to keep fairly square fields so that we can easily add fences and get back to water and that kind of thing. If you use a 660-foot path by 66 feet, if you do the math, that gets you to 1 acre. So pretty much all of the post spacing on our farm is 66 feet apart, because then like 660 feet is a quarter divided into 4. So if you have a 160-acre square quarter section, divide that into 4 even strips, and they'll be 660 feet wide. If you wanted to move less fence, you could go to 330 feet is what we've done in the past, and then you're half an acre. It just makes it for easy math. The nice thing with that is you can go through and count your rows and know how much corn you have ahead of you and say, okay, I've got, a month left of grazing. Am I going to have enough? Am I going to have too much? You can really kind of budget your feed out that way and be able to see it. What we started with is we would make rows by having a guy with a flag stand in the back of a truck, and then you'd push towards the flag and kind of go post to post. That was fine, other than it took 2 guys, and one fall I didn't have 2 guys to do it. So I went out there we set the GPS in our 1 loader tractor. I set it to 66 feet, and I just made all my rows first and then put the fences in. Now that's what we've moved to. It's just a lot nicer. I can go out there and make my grid, and then I know exactly there's an acre there. And then we just put the posts in at the intersections. The flag system works fine. It just takes a couple people. The person standing in the back of the truck in November holding the flags, not really having a good day. When we put the wire up in between, generally we'll just use a single wire hot wire. Our cows are very trained to hot wire, so that's pretty easy. Usually we would put our wires, like a 2-wire fence would be kind of knee and hip, or a single wire fence would be halfway in between. For this single wire, because you're going to have some snow buildup, I go kind of to the top of my hip. My belt line is about the height that you want the wire, because come, this time of year, normally, that wire is starting to get pretty low and they can get over top of it.
What do you use for wire?
What's that?
What do you use for wire?
Just 12.5 gauge high tensile wire.
Okay, you're not using poly wire or cable.
We are using poly wire for our cross fencing. I think I have it.
That's your main divider fence?
Yeah, so I'd have to go right back up to the front. But if we had, so in this case, we're pushing down, like we're putting the posts, if we're going north and south here, or no, here we were going east and west. So we're making our 660 foot wide paddocks. So we're having a high tensile wire going up and down that paddock. And then our rows, so if this is going east and west, then we would also push down rows going north and south to every post, so every 66 feet. And then those ones we would use poly wire. And we'll see that out in the field today. I really like, for this, I like screw-in insulators because then we can pull, it's easy to take those posts in and out because this is still a grain field. So we're gonna have to get rid of these posts at some point in time. I like it so that we can put the posts in, put in a screw-in insulator, come spring, take that insulator off, take the post off, and it's easy to reuse them. You're not smashing insulators, and it's just easy and fast to do. Gates, now, if there's a lesson I have learned, gates are expensive, they are handy. Lifters suck in the winter, and I can attest to that. We've done it before where we've had, rather than put in a gate where the cows have to go underneath the lifter, like underneath the wire to get into the field. It works, but it's a real pain.
How do you re-roll the high tensile wire?
We have a wire roller that Dad built a long time ago. There's commercial options available now. I can't remember the name of the company, but if you look in like the book, like the green book.
Level wind 2.
That's it, yeah. The level winder. There's commercially available options that they'll hydraulically wind up that wire. So we can set up a fence kind of as fast as you can put the posts in. Like for us to set up, say a quarter section in a perfect roll, like if you had 3, so you're gonna have what, 1.5 miles of fence to put up. We would very comfortably set that up in an afternoon. Generally, if you go back to this, we will be unrolling the wire. I don't think we are doing it here, but usually we got wire on the pounder. So as you go through, in this case, we were pushing down the wire as we went. We just found we got on the corn row on whichever row we wanted to go, and just Tyson, my cousin, was driving the tractor. I said, "Okay, stay on this row and then just follow the corn plant where the corn planter went." So it's nice to get that nice and straight, and then we would have the wire behind. Now that we're pushing rows ahead of time, it's literally just follow the path, and then we're unrolling the wire here, putting the posts in. You come back on the quad, screw in the insulator, put up the wire. You get to the far end, tighten it up, you're done.
So if it kinks, you just cut that out.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And Sean's a good guy to ask on using high tensile wire. But yeah, when it's same as any other high tensile jobs that you're doing, if it kinks, yeah, you just put a joint into it. You got to splice it. That is what it is. As the big thing with high tensile wire is keep it tight. As long as it's tight, things are going to work out all right for you. When we're rolling it up, we'll cut the one end, roll, and then go roll from the other. Sometimes we'll put a weight on the one end just to keep it from coiling up, but usually with 2 of us, one guy's holding that wire tight on the spool, the other guy's operating the tractor to pull it in, and like high tensile wire, we can roll up as fast as the hydraulics on the tractor will let us. Barbed wire, we roll up at a lot slower pace, but it's also usually rusted and headed for the dumpster.
The reason the level wind 2 works is because it's got that shaft with a pulley that it's got the serrated shaft so that the pulley goes back and forth consistently. Like I've rolled up 7 miles of wire just with a homemade roller that I had, and I threw it all in the bin. Like I couldn't unroll any of it. So the key is to have it rolled evenly as you're pulling it in.
Yeah.
You can use like a large 7L reel too, and just buy a spool or have an old wooden one, and you can kind of fix that to those spools, spoolers too, and you just got to watch your fingers when you're rolling it up. But it does work.
Yeah, the way ours works is it's just on a 3-point hitch and hydraulics, and then we have either, you can use the original like wooden spool that the high tensile wire comes on if it's loose and easy to pull, or I've also taken discs from a corn planter and then put a 4-inch piece of pipe and welded it in. It gets pretty heavy, but I can pretty much pull wire out of the grass at that point. And then as far as rolling it across, I am the level winder, and I'm the guy standing there with gloves and it's, yeah. You find out what works for your operation. That seems to work for us.
You can use spinning jennies and stuff too. There's different, like
Yes.
you do inlays and the bigger coils and stuff like that. That's kind of what I use.
Yeah. I think the kind of prototype for ours was on a spinning Jenny system, and then we found a horizontal bar just worked better for us. But yeah, you find out what works. There's lots of solutions out there.
I don't have 3 or 4 guys to do it, so I have to do it by myself.
Yeah. We've covered that. So when it comes to feed testing, this is new this year. So we feed tested this cornfield. These are feed tests from the corn we're going to see this afternoon. So October 4th of this year, we tested it. How we did that, we took 2 or 3 spots in the field. And I took 2 or 3 plants and just kind of picked the most, in my eye, the most average plant I could find. And then I took it at about kind of where you would cut it for silage height, basically kind of right there, top of your boots maybe. Snipped it with pruning shears, took it to the yard, and then I have just a Canadian Tire tree mulcher, and then fed it through there to chop it up so we could send it off to the feed lab. And then took, how many stalks I had, filled that little bucket up, and then you just mix it all up really good and take your feed test. And that's how we did it. With the beans and the vetch in there, I also, for every corn plant I took, I kind of imagined a square foot and took about that much of the beans and vetch as well. When we did the one in January, we just did the corn plant because there was very little, like the vetch was pretty much all under the snow, and there was some beans there, but I figured let's go kind of worst case scenario. And if they get extra protein on top of that, well, that's all the better. So in October 4th, the biggest difference here is obviously the dry matter changes a lot. Like we're 36% dry matter up to 76% dry matter. Part of that is because this one had some soybeans and vetch into it that were grass green and plugged this thing up a couple times. This is just corn stalks. And it's, January to October, it's dried down quite a bit. So this, probably what I should do is also have a November test in here, because there's going to be somewhere kind of in the middle of November, this is going to dry down a lot and be closer to this sample than it was to this sample. But crude protein wise of just the corn, like you're kind of that 7 to 8.5%. TDN, you're 70 plus. And I didn't take a look at our stuff from years previous, but I would think that's pretty consistent. I think I've seen as high as 9 for crude protein. TDN is usually 70 to 80. And then our calcium and phos. Now this is one thing I looked at, and our calcium, I was very surprised when I took this sample. Cowbites told me that, no, you don't have to really add a bunch of calcium there. But as it dries down, whether the calcium disappears or I don't know what relationship's happening there, but we're going to add our, whatever mineral we go to, we're going to probably put a little more calcium in there than we had before. I think the soybeans and vetch, we're adding some to there for sure. But maybe that's some change in the corn as well.
On October 4th of this year, your corn might have still been growing.
Yeah.
Even we hadn't had a really.
It was after a frost. We waited till after the frost to do it. So we had a frost on that. Yeah, we had
a straight corn test because you're comparing. These aren't apples to apples, right?
No, it's not perfectly apples to apples. I do have a straight corn test from our field at home that we took for grain. I ran out of time last night and didn't look at it, but if anybody's really interested in that stuff, we have data from years previous and this year as well. This thing, before you used to have to send it away to somebody, like we've put corn through a mix mill before, like a hammer mill to chop it up. That works. Then Dad sold the mix mill. So then what would we do? Last year I took an axe and chopped it all up on a board, and that sucked. So I bought this thing. It was on sale at Canadian Tire for the right price. Probably a case of beer. Come on over and you can probably use this thing if you want to do some samples, or just go to Canadian Tire when they're on sale. It's like for a couple $100, it's worth getting rid of the frustration. So when you're supplementing on corn grazing, you're probably going to need fiber, protein, and calcium. That's probably what corn is lacking. Corn and alfalfa go together hand in glove. because, you know, what the corn is lacking, the alfalfa generally has calcium, protein, and some fiber in there. Alfalfa hay is easy and convenient. That's what we're using this year. It can be expensive compared to other protein sources. But the nice thing with alfalfa is it's easy. You go out there, unroll a bale, you can have 100, 200, 300 cows get around. You know, every cow gets an equal opportunity to get it. We've used DDGs before, we've used supplement pellets, and an extensive system when you're out in the field, it gets really difficult. Alfalfa silage would be another really good one. If you had a TMR mixer and you're close, that would be another good way to supplement them. Actually, I have a friend of mine he's put a TMR mixer on an old army truck, like a 6-wheel drive army truck. It's a mean looking unit, but he said with that, now they can supplement their cows 10 miles away, and it's just driving down the road to check them. It's not like they're dragging a tractor 10 miles. That would get old pretty quick. So there's options out there. When you're looking at cost of protein, it's dollars a pound of the protein source divided by the dry matter divided by crude protein gets you cost per pound of protein. Because protein sources, if you're looking at soybean meal, DDGs, canola meal, alfalfa, tubs, all those things, everything's got a different amount of protein in it. Generally, what we're looking at is supplementing the protein first. The rest the mineral can make up for the calcium. The rest usually works out itself. So for this year, we got 10 cents a pound alfalfa hay that's 88.5% dry matter and 18.25% protein. So you divide these, and when you're dividing a decimal, it ups the price. So it's 62 cents per pound of protein that we're feeding. So if you're comparing this to, say, lick tubs or DDGs, then you're comparing apples to apples if you're just looking at protein. So our corn this year, this is the field we're going to go look at. There's 120 cows approximately out there. They get 1 acre of corn every 1 to 3 days, depending on where it is in the field. We're giving them 1 bale of alfalfa hay, usually 2 to 3 times a week. They have tall fescue straw. Any straw would work. This is just what we had. We grew tall fescue this year. We had the straw. Generally, we're giving them kind of a bale picker load at a time and bale grazing it adjacent to the field. One key here is not on the field, because then if you have bale grazing on your cornfield, you're going to have something like a mess of residue that you have to deal with next spring. So one of the things we've learned is to put the bales adjacent to the field or in a pasture or paddock, near it. And then we're giving them free choice mineral. Right now we're just on a feed rate 1-to-1 mineral, nothing too fancy. We're probably going to be upping that, especially coming into calving and breeding season. There's a few things I want to try there. I'm not convinced our mineral program is where it needs to be. You're kind of committed to free choice. If you were supplementing with, say, DDGs or a TMR mixer, you could force feed some mineral into them. That is one thing you're kind of stuck with at times with corn grazing, is your only free choice is only free choice mineral. And you can't guarantee that every cow is getting it. So that does come with some limitations, but it's a trade-off. So for this field, they entered the field as pairs on November 22nd after we preg tested. The calves were weaned on December 22nd, so we had pairs on there for a month. Pairs do fantastic on corn grazing. There's enough energy generally that you can keep, cows will maintain their condition, not really gain it, not necessarily lose it, generally. And the calves will be fluffy and fat and healthy, and sometimes they'll creep feed themselves underneath the wire. The calves love it out there. They do really well. It's also a lot less work because you're only feeding one pen rather than having to feed cows and calves. They're all in one spot. The south 40 acres we finished about the 19th of January, so rough math. And when I'm counting calves in there, I count calves at 50% the value of the cow, because they're eating some and the cow's lactating. I don't know if it's perfect math, but it gets you close enough. So for the south paddock there, we were 214 cow days per acre on 40 acres. Not fantastic, not terrible. This is land that's new to us the first year. She's a little sandy, and there's a lot, you'll see when we get out there, there's a lot of field variability in this field. We had some paddocks where 1 acre was barely enough to keep them happy for a day because the corn's about this tall. And then a week later, you're in corn that's 10 feet tall way over your head, and they were 3 days and they barely had it cleaned up. So anywhere from 120 to 360 grazing days an acre. And that can vary that much in a field. Okay, so now if you're starting into corn grazing and this is your first year doing it, number one rule of corn grazing is when you start, you make sure they are full. If you're gonna have an issue, most times it'll be when you're starting out onto that field. The biggest thing is they have to be full. So what we will do is they have to enter with a small rumen, with a full rumen, and small paddocks are your friend, and moving often is your friend. Using poor quality hay or straw as a guide is a really, really good strategy. Yeah, so when we get the cows to enter into the cornfield, usually what we'll do is we'll bale graze them or feed them hay, get them really good and give them all the hay they can eat, kind of give them enough for 2 or 3 days, get them really good and full. And then that afternoon, go out, say at 1 o'clock, and give them a bale like second cut alfalfa or something really, really appetizing that they'll be full and they'll go out and eat some more. And then once they've got that cleaned up, so say 3 o'clock in the afternoon, now we open the gate, let them into the cornfield. So you're making them eat their vegetables first and then give them dessert. If they go out there with the full rumen, that's probably 80% of your problems are gone. If you go out there and they're empty and hungry and bawling at you and we want food, that's when you're going to run into problems. With the poor quality hay or straw, whether it's in a bale grazing or even in a bale feeder, if they're eating straw, you can tell they're starting to get hungry. I have seen, and cows will balance their diet. When they were in, actually it was this field here, I've seen cows walk a half mile back out of the corn I just let them in to come and balance their diet with straw. So day 2 of corn grazing, now you've put them out there. They have a full rumen, you've put them out in the field, they've grazed corn, they've probably picked all the cobs off, they're happy. Beware, now make sure, the big thing here is make sure they clean it up. So beware of the brown-eyed cow syndrome. When you drive out to the field and they look at you and go, we're so hungry. They think they're starving, but they're not. So here, don't move these cows. There's still lots of leaves. You probably pick through there. There's probably some cobs with some corn on them yet. If the whole paddock looks like this, those cows aren't ready to move. They're not going to die. They think they're going to, but they're not. As soon as you go away, they're going to keep grazing it. They will be fine. When it's here and you're starting to see some kind of bare snow, now this paddock here, these cows are absolutely ready to move. The tricky part here is this is the same paddock. This area here is right there. So it's a little bit of an art to this, is finding out when they're ready to move or not. But that's where using the poor quality hay or straw will give you a guide. If you go out there, it all looks like this and they've eaten up a whole bale of straw, they're ready to go. They're ready to move. If the straw hasn't been touched and they've got this much left, there's lots of forage in there. You got to remember the rumen is a batching system. So you can move them every 3 days and have the same diet as if you moved them every day. Once you get past that, they start to have a bit of a roller coaster nutrition. Western Beef Development Center has done work on 3 days versus 9-day moves. And with the 9-day moves, they would have, because you're giving such a large area, they go out and eat all the corn cobs first. And then they go and eat the leaves. Then they maybe go and eat the hay. Then they finish up with stalks. So by day 9, they're eating just stalks and there's not much out for them. If you're doing it every 3 days, it's generally a smaller piece you're giving them. They have cobs one day, leaves the next, stalks the last day, and then they're back into corn cobs again. It gives them a more even plane of nutrition. So here's just some more pictures. This is typically what you would see, like if you were making, if you had cows in good condition without calves, you know, or your basic dry pregnant cow, this is what I would look for. Like this is kind of an ideal. Even right here, you can see like this is a poor area of the field where the corn's shorter. They're going to clean up more of it. Where your corn's taller, they're going to leave a little more residue because there's just a little more lignified stuff in the stalks. But yeah, this, and if I had dry pregnant cows and I wasn't trying to put weight on them, 100%, that's exactly what I want my field to look like. We can go through that with a no-till drill or a planter and plant right into that, no issues. Jim, the first time that I think this is actually the field, the first time we did corn on corn, this is what it looked like that winter. So I remember when we went through it, both of us were like, wow, this works pretty good. Better than we expected it to, actually. So 1 to 3 days is ideal. Now, it's a trade-off. I get it. More moves is more work, but it's less risk, and you're probably going to get a little bit better utilization. The way I look at it is, you know, if instead of feeding cows, everybody's like, oh, you know, you got to go out there every day and move a wire. Like, that's a bunch of work. Well, so is starting a tractor and hauling silage to them every day. It's just a trade-off. You're going to get, it's going to be a little bit more work to move them more often. It's good exercise. But it's less risk of acidosis, and you're probably going to get better utilization of the field. One thing that we have found that works really good, if you're supplementing them with protein, giving them 2 days at a time, so you can move the wire into the corn one day and then and then give them their bale of alfalfa or whatever your protein supplement is the other day. It works really well because then all of your cows will come to the protein supplement and everybody gets their share of protein. I really like that system. That's why what we'll try to do this winter, because we're giving them a bale every second or third day, is try to give them their alfalfa on the days that they're not moving. Now, here's another mistake I have made multiple times and had the whole crew mad at me. If you need to take them up, say you want to sort off pairs or you need to vaccinate, or for whatever reason you have to get them into the corral, don't go out that morning if you always go out at 8 a.m. and move the cows into a new patch of corn. If you go out there at 8 a.m. and say, okay, girls, let's go up to the corrals, you're not going to have a good day because they're going to fight you the whole way trying to get back into that cornfield when you want them to go up to the corrals. What I would recommend, and what we've done now, is try and feed them 6 to 12 hours before, or so feed them in the morning and move them the next day, or feed them the night before and then try to move them. Or if you're doing that every 2 days, on the day you would give them a protein supplement, that's your day you're going to want to take them up to the corrals. Using the supplement as bait really helps. Because yeah, it takes it'll take us an hour to get them up to the yard. No, it's like 3, because every time they have a chance, they're going to try and get back past you to the corn. Few other tips and tricks and stuff we've used. I got this one from Steve Kenyon. If you can have, so this is not the water system we're using now, but the one we've used before. One wire is hot, right? As close, kind of as hot as you can get it. And the other wire actually goes, there's a ground rod down in here and it goes directly to ground. So right above the water bowl, there was as hot as we can have it, hot wire and a ground wire right there. So when they get in here and pushing and fighting for water, somebody's going to get a zap pretty much every day. And this teaches them that fences are things that we don't touch. We're going to be polite and ladylike and drink our water nicely. And then when we see a fence, we're just not going to touch it because we know those hurt. Because when you go out into the field where you got one wire of polywire, on snow, they're probably grounded a little bit. The shock isn't going to be quite as there. If you have this system, it just kind of reminds them to have some manners and they'll be much more respectful of the fence. I don't have that in our system this year, but whenever we can, I try to implement that because it works really, really good. We use polybraid wire. There's many ways to fence it. You can use the aircraft cable, you can use braided wire, you can use all sorts of things. What we use is a poly braid from either Powerflex Fencing, or I believe Gallagher has one now. Yeah, turbo braid wire works really well. I like Gallagher temporary fencing stuff. I generally stay fixed for my permanent fencing, but the Gallagher seems to have a really good products for the temporary stuff. Gallagher reels, Gallagher posts, and their turbo wire. Another one that works good is this PFI post. They're a lot heavier, but the neat thing about them is they have kind of this spade bit on their foot, and then there's an area here where you can actually hit that with a hammer, and in frozen ground you can hammer this in, and you only have to go in an inch or two, and then if you give it a kick the next day, if it's frozen in the ground, because it's not round here, it'll kick the soil loose so you can get them back out of the ground. They're not without their flaws, but they do work good for winter grazing. Big thing is not all posts are created equal. The cheap mild steel posts don't work great. Gallagher ring tops are not fantastic just because they don't have the 2 feet. I like these posts, and the Gallagher just plain old orange top pigtails are my favorites.
Find that post.
Total Farm Supply had these. Again, Steve Kenyon got me onto these ones. I just found that Total Farm had them, and they work very good. They're heavier, and they will bend more easily, but they do work. We have some of these in the field as well. We'll see them. And then as far as getting posts into the frozen ground, if you have really good soil health and good aggregation, I've been able to put posts into the ground with just my foot well into February. Not like this field, we can't do that. It's not there yet. You can use either a hammer if you have a post like this to just tap them into the ground. That works really nice because hammers generally don't run out of batteries. Or you can use a drill. And Johnny, I will admit it, the Milwaukee drills I am wrong. I have sinned. The Mastercraft drills are not as good as Milwaukee ones. I will admit it. Ideally, you want to be done this by the 15th to 20th of March before you have spring breakup. If you have cows out on a whether it's a till or no till field, if there's not sod out there, they're going to punch through it. So we're going to try to be done April 1st at the latest, but by the 15th, 20th of March. This year, we're going to go a little bit farther because we kind of have more corn ahead of us than we should have. I've grazed into April on corn. You're going to waste a lot and make a big mess. And sometimes you just got to do it. That's part of the context thing. If you're grazing into kind of late March into April, like I say, you're going to waste a lot more, and just be prepared. You're going to have to go out there and bounce across it with a cultivator or a disc or something to get your seed bed fixed back up. I mentioned the wood chipper for feed tests. So we're getting to the end here. So this was on actually Dad's field. So in the past, we've put supplemental bales right in the field. Heinrichs have done that for years, and you guys get along with that good. That is another option. You guys use that to put your...
We've minimized it
Yeah.
a fair bit to get the hay out of the field, but
Yeah.
stopped using straw bales. We used to put straw bales out, and it just
Yeah.
needs a mess. But
A nice thing about this system is you never have to worry about punching posts into the ground because
especially when you got a foot and a half of snow.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like that.
You can just put your posts right into the bales. So yeah, this was, like you can see, there's the cob right there. So this was, I believe, 2 feet of snow. You're kind of committed to snowshoes at this point. So you get a lot of exercise. But these cows are belly deep in snow and grazing corn, and it worked just fine. They'll pound it all down. There was some, I think there was one bale in this field that was blown in so much they couldn't eat it, but the rest of this field, they ate it just fine. With the 2 different varieties, so here would be your longer season variety, and here's your shorter season variety. You can see the different maturity in the 2. The big thing there is just have the 2 different varieties. Any questions so far? Okay, we got a couple.
The heavier the snow, or the deeper the snow, the less the water consumption. Like, are they traveling back to the water or less with fluffy snow? Like,
I would think so. Not that we really have noticed, because we've always had water fairly close. The farther away you get from water, the more apt they are to stay out there. depending on where your shelter and stuff is. So a couple more slides before lunch here. So that's kind of the end of our presentation. This is my free advertising just because I can, I guess. We're hiring. If you know somebody that's looking, that would, we're looking for an operator and equipment service technician. If anybody you know comes to mind for that, give them my name and number, and we're looking for somebody for the spring. Or pretty much immediately, but for the spring for sure. And if they can weld, even better. So yeah, that's the end of our end of the show. This was one of my custom cows we had. We really liked her. And then this is just, I can't remember where this is at, where this field is, but that's kind of typically when you move them into the field, that's what you'll have cows that, it'll look like that, you know, once you let them in, and by the next day, it'll be down to look like you went through it with the combine. So, questions, comments?
So you're speaking of storm days, which wasn't very long ago, like about a week ago. How many days of that kind of wind that we had would they not be going to the cornfield, or they were every day into the wind or feeding? So
where our field is this year, just because of its location, we don't have a lot of option for storm days. We kind of saved one of the better protected paddocks for them. Just the way it worked out, because, and you'll see when we get to the field, because they're at the far end, we coaxed them and tried to call them back to, okay, come over here to this well-protected paddock. And they were like, no, our corn's right there. You open this wire every day and our corn's right there. So they actually stayed out very much in the open. Like when we go in the gate, you'll see like the stuff at the very east end of this field is where they stayed throughout that winter, or throughout that weather last week. We were trying to get them into a sheltered area, but the corn provides enough of its own shelter that they were happy with it.
Did you have to supplement any more feed in the cold weather last week? Or was the corn enough?
Corn was enough. We probably gave them an extra bale of alfalfa instead of every 3 days, went every 2. And we also rolled it out. So generally I try not to put any hay on the cornfield so we don't have to deal with a mess next spring. With alfalfa and rolling it out, I'm not afraid to do that because they'll clean enough of it up that we can get through it with the drill next spring. So we move the wire and then put the bale right beside where they're grazing.
Are you rolling it out or are you shredding it in a row?
Rolling it out. With alfalfa, like if you had poor quality hay or straw, yeah, shredding it doesn't really matter. But alfalfa, I want the leaves. I want to eat every leaf, so we're rolling it out.
You said when you start into the corn, you fill them up. So when you're moving every time, do you fill them before you move them? Or
No, because once they're, same as a steer in a feedlot, once he gets on a certain amount of barley, his rumen changes over to it and he can stay on that plane of nutrition. If you empty him right out, then you start him back on, then you can run into problems. But because you're trying to keep a level plane of nutrition throughout the winter time, once they get onto it, then you're pretty much fine. One thing I didn't mention here, if you have really fat cows, the more condition a cow has, the less energy she needs, just because she's not using so much to heat herself up. Our cows right now, we're a little bit behind the 8 ball and they're thinner than I would like them to be. So we're giving them a lot, we're leaving a lot more residue behind us than we normally would because we're trying to gain weight on these cows. Also because of that though, because they're a little thinner, we can give them more without having the acidosis risk. If you have really fat cows, they don't need much. They'll come at the fence, then they'll be bawling at you thinking that they're hungry. That's where you'll kill cows, is by giving them too much corn.
So you're in the middle of grain country here. How does this compete? Like, you got to rent land just like everybody else. And the economics of it, how does it play out? Is it worth your time and effort?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I didn't have a chance to run our actual numbers from this before. I have in years past. Grazing corn has been top 3 crops year over year. It's yeah, like this year, it's not going to, like our other field, if we harvested it for grain, it was an exceptional yielder. So it will be definitely our winner. If we were to graze it, I would have needed like 600 cows and probably haul water a few times, but it would have penciled out fairly well. Generally, when we're charging like custom rate, we're $3 a head a day. This year we're at $3.25. So
What's your fertilizer savings year after corn?
Not much, not as much as you would think. We soil test every year. The year after corn, there's really no difference from a grain, corn, canola crop, wheat crop, whatever. Like it hasn't really moved the needle much. 2 and 3 years after, you'll notice a little bit of a difference. Essentially, we're not adding fertilizer to this field because the cows are still taking something off of it. They're recycling 80% of what they eat back onto the field. The big gain, and now this is my opinion, whether it's right or not, I don't know. But the big gain you're getting here is we're feeding the biology and recycling those nutrients, taking that unavailable nutrients like they were talking about earlier and making them into a more plant available form in the manure. So it's not essentially that you're not really adding any fertility to this field, but you're cycling it back for the next crop. So what we've seen is the year after, there's not a big difference. 2 years after, like if we do corn, canola, and then go to wheat, the canola crop we can't really cut our fertility that much. But the year after, like the wheat year, that's where we have seen we can cut rates back a bit. It seems like it takes a little while for that pump to kind of prime up to feed the next crop.
Are you happy with the soybeans and veg? Are you continuing that?
Yeah, we're definitely going to do that next year. I think next year, instead of doing 2 passes of herbicide, we're going to try it with just 1 of glyphosate in the field. The soybeans are a no-brainer. The vetch, if I could get a really glyphosate tolerant vetch or something else, like if you could have glyphosate tolerant peas, 100%, I'd put that in there. No questions asked.
Have you grazed anything other than cows?
No, calves. Yeah, there's deer, lots of deer in this field.
I was just wondering about putting a stalker or something that they what would happen. How do they do?
Oh, okay, I see what you mean. I thought you meant another species.
No. I meant like a different class, not other than a cow, like a stalker or a finnaker or anything.
No, I've thought about doing stalkers out here. I think you could. The problem is you need to be able to manage, like with stalkers, you need to be able to treat them, weigh them. You need to have a little tighter. Like we're 4 or 5 miles from home.
Okay.
Like we're big time remote.
Yeah.
Part of kind of an opportunity that we have, but also a limitation is we're on rented land and we're always moving around. So everything we have out in this field is portable. When we leave, it all comes with us. Right. Like the field we're on, we don't have it next year. Yeah. So we need to be able to take everything with us when we go. If I were, if you had a section of land and your yard was dead center in the middle, well then yeah, to graze this field 1 year, this field next year, this one the next, it would open a lot of options that way. But just kind of in our context, because we're so mobile, stalkers would be a little more, I think because you want a higher level of management on them. I haven't been able to make that work for us, or at least take the risk yet. I think someday I would like to, but I just haven't yet. I do know I got a friend that grazes bison. The nice thing about bison is they fence themselves. You don't have to cross fence them because they don't like being alone. They won't go into the corn farther than when they can't see another bison. And I think the other part of that is I don't think you want to be rolling up polywire with a herd of bison right on your ass. Yeah, Brooks White.
The calves that you had on the cows, those were April calves, or were they old?
Yeah, May-born calves, May-June calves. And yeah, we've kept calves on the cow right till first week of February. And I think as long as you're about 6 weeks to a month before calving time, you're probably fine. Like I wouldn't be afraid to keep them on probably right till March. if we had the feed and cows were in good enough shape. We pulled them off earlier this year because I want to put weight on the back of these cows. So that's why we weaned earlier than normal.